The council meeting Monday, November 27th, 2017. Opening prayer, Reverend James Clark, St. Paul's Roman Catholic Church. Welcome, Reverend.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Let us be at prayer. Even though the Thanksgiving weekend is officially over, it's always good to express thanks to God for our many blessings tonight as a community and as a nation. So thank you, God, for your many abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself and for health and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful works of service to our local community. And in the scriptures, you've revealed that citizens ought to obey governing authorities, since you've established those, God, those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, tonight we pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, and in particular for this assembled council and guests. We ask that you graciously grant us wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, and the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement. We pray for the agenda set before us this evening so that our discussions, recommendations, and decisions will benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved community of North Canton. In your most blessed name we pray thanks. We say amen and amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Clerk, please call the roll.
Soretta.
Here.
Foltz.
Here.
Fontaine.
Here.
Griffith.
Here.
Kiesling.
Here.
Peters.
Here.
And Weirin.
Here.
7 present, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. For your consideration, a motion and a second to approve as presented. Council meeting minutes November 13th, 2017. Special council meeting minutes November 9th, 2017. Mayor's Court receipts October 2017. And we have a liquor license transfer from J. Voss Inc. at 1406 Main Street North, North Canton, Ohio, to Twice Light LLC, 1406 Main Street North, North Canton, Ohio.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Foltz.
Yes.
Fontaine.
Yes.
Griffith.
Yes.
Kiesling.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Weirin.
Yes.
And Soretta.
Yes.
7 yes to approve the above minutes, receipts, and the transfer of liquor license.
All right, thank you very much. Without further ado, Director of Administrative Services, Patrick Fiorio, has a presentation, and we're looking forward to this.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll rearrange your office just a little bit. Put it back. Mr. President, Mayor, members of council, members of administration, thank you for this opportunity to talk to you and to the community about much ado over a new park expansion project for the city of North Canton. I'll be presenting a PowerPoint to you, and I know those are awfully difficult to follow. It may be difficult to read at times, so we'll probably dim the lights a little bit if we could. Mr. Grimes. And all of the slides that you see that we'll be talking about what we're doing or what we would like to do for the parks are on a display board outside the council chambers, and I'd be happy to review them with you at the end of the presentation. And so what we're talking about today is, this is a play for funding of the performing arts, the cultural arts, and the educational elements in the North Canton Park and Recreation System, Part 1. And I would like to thank, at the beginning of this presentation, Doug Lane, who was very instrumental in this opportunity, making us aware of it. This is a opportunity to secure some capital funding from the state of Ohio, who's interested in funding performing arts, cultural arts, and recreational activities. Also, I'd like to thank our architect, designer John Dodovich, who is here tonight, for all of the work that he has put into this. Let me just read, if I can, just a quick short statement, and then we'll get right into it. As cities will remain forever, it is important for city residents to still feel as connected as possible to their natural environment. When people are connected to nature, it has shown to contribute to feeling less isolated and less focused on themselves. Consequently, they become more eager to form connections with their neighbors. A greater sense of community and social ties generally emerge, as do increases in generosity, trust, and civic mindedness. Loneliness, aggression, and crime decrease. North Canton's parks and outdoor recreation areas are widely recognized and represent a portfolio of assets that should be viewed as critical to advancing North Canton's prosperity. In the past 3 years, from 2015 to 2017, the city has invested in excess of $1.8 million on facility maintenance and upgrades at our parks and recreation facilities, including, but not limited to, Dogwood Pool and Shelter, Civic Center, Price Park Pond and Trails, parking amenities, and park equipment and general beautification. The bottom line is parks return dividends, social, ecological, economical, that far exceed the investments made by state and local agencies, public and private partners. These assets provide a place to recreate and, at their best, help make North Canton cohesive, connect people to their places and to each other, engender civic engagement, and remind us of our connection to nature and to our history.
Reminds me of Saturday morning here, Pat.
Yay! Yeah, we'll bring a little levity to this. We're going to talk about a play. It's a play for money. It's a play for the park system. We're going to talk about the growth and expansion of the park system model. And the model that has the most success in the United States is one that combines cutting-edge park and recreation programs and facilities with the tried and true ones expected by the community. First, we'll talk about, in our prelude, park history. Did you know that there is theories of park development? Did you know that there is an evolution in park planning? Act 1, when we get to talking about existing infrastructure, will showcase what we have available presently in the city. In Act 2, we will talk about the new additions that we wish to add. Park planning is evolved in about 4 distinct phases. Phase 1 occurred in the period 1895 to about 1910 and was known as the pleasure ground era of park planning. And at that time, there was no real infrastructure built out for, roads and ways to get to various places. And so the parks that were built in this era were built on the outskirts of the city, away from the masses. It was for the elites. And the only way to get to those parks were to have transportation. The only people that had transportation were the wealthy and the elite. So it was a pleasure playground for them. When we rolled into the 19-teens, if you know your history, we embarked in this country on a progressive reform era. It affected all aspects of life, the parks included, And in this period, from 1910 to 1930, the concern was with children. Where can children safely play? Well, it wasn't out at the outskirts of the city where those parks were built, and they had to do something inside. And so in this reform era, we saw the creation of what would be Central Park. We saw the creation of large field houses. And the idea was that as the United States was going through a large period of immigration, the best thing to do would be to put these individuals together in a field house, in a Central Park, and let them interact with one another and get that cohesiveness. As we left the Reform Park era, we go to period 3, 1930 to 1965, and this is the period of time in which North Canton's parks system was created, or the designs for come from this era. And it's an era of recreational facility. And it's not so much having large green spaces and large recreational facilities, it's about getting into the neighborhoods. Finding a way to have a neighborhood park in every neighborhood so that the kids there didn't have to go across town. They could stay and play in their own domain. Finally, in period 4, which is the present model, which we are not really in this model, we would like to get to this model, 1965 to the present, is an open space concept. And this is referring to trying to put parks, green spaces, recreational facilities in any available space, any nook or cranny. We see this being developed in urban settings where there's buildings that are torn down in between a couple other buildings that are still nice, and turning that space in between into a community garden or other recreational activity zone. We also see factories that are closed around the country that are not being redeveloped, that are used to put new recreational facilities into play inside those factories. Finally, there is a new change that we're on the precipice of. It's technically undefined, but if you talk to people who are into park management, read some of the publications that are out there, they're showing that where parks are trying to get to is be more current in their programming, and what's current in their programming is talking about the environment, talking about how to make the world ecologically a safer place to be, and how we can use parks to help produce assets rather than consume assets. If we look at one of the current editions of Recreation Management that we happen to have a subscription to, they talk about launching environmental education programs within the parks, because there's so many people who are in touch with nature and love nature. You need to bring those people into your parks. Act 1, the city's existing recreational park assets. The tried and true that we talked about, an important component to successful programs. Neighborhood playground parks, these are a representative sample of what we have. West Park, Upper Glenwood, etc. We also have reflection parks, Rotary Trail, Bitzer Park, Schneider Valley. Recreation parks, Dogwood Pool, the North Canton Skate Park, Dogwood Park. And we have one main community park, Price Park. Those are our existing assets, and before we move to Act 2, one that we would like to certainly showcase again is one that Council has moved forward with already. Coming in 2018 is a town square pocket garden between the Huntington and City Hall. This is a new and yet unnamed 2,000 square foot community park garden near the town square. This will, with some Wi-Fi and smart device charging stations, invite many people to stay and enjoy the fresh landscape design that will provide year-round color. The New Berlin North Canton Permanent Walking Tour will begin here in this area. This will help to educate visitors of North Canton's rich heritage, including the newly restored historic guard station from the Hoover Company, complete with illuminated photographic panels displaying pictures of the past. Act 2. Where do we want to go? Scene 1, Bitzer Park. Bitzer Park needs some minor improvements in this concept. And in looking at trying to bring the performing arts and the cultural arts together and provide some sort of economic activity as well, we would like to have more events downtown. We would like to make the town square a more vibrant and active place, particularly as it relates to community events that happen throughout the year. The Memorial Day Parade, the 4th of July Run, the Veterans Day activities, which we just completed. And what we would like to have is in the, let's see if I can make this pointer work, right down in this area here. So you see Main Street and Maple. So back here in this corner by the Y, and this is again a concept design, is we would like to build a stage on this half circle kind of shape. We would like the stage to be covered, and I'll explain this here in just a second. What would we use this for? Well, like with our Veterans Day activities, rather than just standing around and not having a clear view of the presentations that were being made, the speakers who were reading very powerful, emotional testimonials, if we could showcase them on a covered stage, it would be much better and add more meaning to it. In the Main Street Festival, which is sponsored by the Chamber in conjunction with the city, we'd love to see that continue to grow, and to the extent that we can have activities here, folk bands playing. For the Y, it's a great staging area for the 4th of July Run and that type of thing. So there's a real genuine need for a stage in this area. I'll get back to this. This looks exactly what you would think it would be. That is an airplane wing, and we're going to get back to that in just a second. So just keep that vision in your head there for a minute. So for Bitzer Park, we want to put this stage in that corner. Scene 2, Dogwood Park. We're moving up the scale in what we are attempting to do. So where Bitzer Park was a little easier to do, this is a complete redesign of Dogwood. So I just want to take a second to look at these existing conditions. So we have the Dogwood Pavilion here, east-west side, and as you've heard me say before council before, in a 365-day period that we analyzed, there were 365 rentals. This place is filled all the time. One of the conundrums that we have with that, though, is we have limited parking. There are 25 spaces here. What we're seeing is parking then that is flooding over into the side streets, into the neighborhoods, parking that is taking place in the pool, parking down in this area over here, which would be the stadium parking lot. All this foot traffic coming across at different stations along the way in front of the EMS building. We would like to make this a little bit safer. Council has already approved, at least for the budget for next year, looking at redesigning the crosswalks all along 7th Street from Dogwood Park up to the street on the east side of the stadium, just past the main high school entrance. All right, so what are we looking at here? There's a lot of drawings that I could show you that Mr. Godovich had put together, but we're just trying to get to the end. I don't want to turn this into a real long presentation. So the existing entrance and exit would remain, and you could literally pull in here and go along here and park in any one of these 25 spaces that would remain. But what we would like to introduce is a solution to the parking problem, and we're introducing a parking design that is non-orthogonal. I learned that word.
Non-orthotic.
Non-orthogonal. It's not rectangular or square-shaped. And engineers will tell you that you can get more parking per square foot in these kind of designs than you can in the traditional rectangles and squares. So if you were to pull in here and instead of going this way, go this way, back in, on this right inner side, you would pick up 28 parking spaces. On this left outer side, you would pick up 33. So our grand total would move from 25 up to 87. That's a significant increase in the parking capability to be able to host not only what's happening over here, but in what are 2 new amenities that we would be putting into this park. So we'll start with the biggest one first, up here. So if you did get out of your car and park in any of these areas here, you would have a little walkway that would go from one end of the park to the other, and have some, grass area on the other side of that. But this brown area that you see on here, this would be a new 22,000 square foot playground. And this would be very much making Dogwood into a community park. It would take some pressure off of Price Park, which is our only community park at the present time. So with 22,000 square feet, you can put a lot of stuff there. And as an example, if any of you have ever been up to Bettler Park in Greene, you're familiar with the playscape that's there. It's an all-wooden structure, rock climbing walls, swinging bridges, all kinds of different activity zones that are, in a device that's 50 yards long. So you have more than enough space to put something like that and still entertain other ideas, or just more open space for kids to play and swing and the like. We had envisioned going around the exterior of the playground with a wrought iron fence and stone pillar design that is what St. Paul's has over there using in their parking lot. It's very beautiful, and this would help with parents who are having their kids there that are young from wandering off north into the wooded area. Those that are renting at Dogwood could let their kids into the park here, and they could play and know that they're in a safe environment, free from any animals or wandering off. Down at this end of and of course at each end of the park, we would have to put a public restroom so that people could get into that and access that. We would add these trails that leave the park and go over and connect to the Stark Park Trail system. We'd like people to be able to walk the parks, come down, park trails, come down and jump into Dogwood Park. Realigning the crossings on 7th Street that I mentioned earlier would then allow them to continue on their journey if they left here across the street and into the rest of the trail system. And then if we move into this area here, we'll try to bring up a little bit bigger slide. This is what we were envisioning to be one of the first performing arts centers or facilities. And it can take a number of different designs. It just depends on what the community wants. And we envision that there will be further meetings with the residents and the community in fleshing out all these designs and what we would like to do. But you could have, in this case here, along this wall, which faces 7th Street, you could have that be the only wall in this building and the rest be wide open. Performances could happen inside here with lighting that would be in the ceilings, but it would have an open air concept where seating could go through here all the way out. This is 5,000 plus square feet in the total play. The building is about 1,700. You could expand seating out into the grass area under the trees. A lot of activities we could have here. North Canton Players Guild's very interested in it, the city schools, library, looking for another location for children reads programs, also movies in the park, so we could provide another location. Now this one is going to take a minute or two to explain, because this is some history here. And this is where we talk about that educational element. And as we've been pitching this concept to various benefactors around the community, we learned that one was very interested in the playground, very interested in helping the children have a new place to play. And as we met with the architect and talked about this concept, we began doing a little research. And as you know, back during World War II, the Hoover Company and Boss Hoover, they played an integral role in getting children who were from Hoover employees in England out of the country and relocated over here in North Canton. But what you may not know is that that was actually a whole countrywide program. Operation Pied Piper is what the British government called it. And its purpose was exactly what the Hoover Company was doing: get as many children out of England as possible and relocated somewhere far away. The thought was that as the Germans were bombing all the cities day and night and preparing for what they believed to be was an imminent invasion, it was necessary to move children to other parts of the British Empire, Canada, Australia, other islands, and to the United States if possible. So imagine, if you will, this whole campaign that's going on, and you know that you're one of the fortunate ones that gets to send your kids away, but you know when you take your children to that train station to put them on, you're telling them that they're just going on a short holiday. They'll be back, enjoy your time, we'll talk when you get back. And the parents knowing full well they're not coming back because they're being shipped someplace else to be safe during the war. So imagine how you would feel as a parent or grandparent and have that happen. And then you realize as the child, as you get off the train and now you're getting on a boat, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then they come to the United States and they're placed with other families and their world is turned upside down. We wanted to be able to tell that story, or would hope that someone would help us tell that story before that story is lost to history. So the architect reached out to the Little Tykes Company, which showed a very strong interest in helping develop this portion of the playground if we should be so blessed to receive enough funding from private benefactors and the like to make this happen. But so Little Tykes did a lot of the heavy lifting on this, but the idea was to take, you know, what would have been a 1939, 1940 era English train station and recreate that, and in conjunction with the North Canton Library, do a story walk that would take you through the story of what happened here, so that it could never be lost, and provide a nice educational component, but also great playground. A lot of the equipment is custom made for this application. There's also the other side, the other side of the story where the war is over. And you know, 5 or 6 years later, after the war was over, there was an effort to repatriate the children back to England, and it didn't go very well. Most of these kids that came here came at a formative time. The people that they were living with, they ended up thinking of as their family. That was their real mom and dad, and when they went back to England, who are you? Why are you meeting me at the train station? I don't know who you are. Those that did, that did remember and were there, were returning to squalor, poverty, bombed out cities, if their parents were even alive. Many of them all came back to the U.S. and to other places. It's a very tragic story, but it's an important part of our heritage here in North Canton, and it's one that we would like to see involved. Now, when the war was over and the kids, a lot of the kids went back, aviation was a lot more developed in 1946 than it was in 1939. And so many of the kids, went back by plane. And you remember that airplane wing that I said was in the park. We would really like to have, or we could in this concept, an actual vintage, World War II aircraft wing that would be the cover for that stage. And we think that in Veterans Park, that it would have a very, very close tie into that. It could be a big attraction regionally to come see something like this if this was all able to put together. So that is a concept that we have pitched, and we will see how that plays out.
That's pretty that also has ramps too, right?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. And I must say that was a great catch that the mayor had made there, because in this, from Little Tykes, they've made this so that it would be accessible to handicapped children and be able to utilize that facility, which is often very difficult, in the parks where it's a swing or a slide, is all you have to choose from. So yeah, thank you. Okay, moving on to the scene 3, creating a new recreation and performing arts district. And this would be out on Well, before I tell you where it's at, imagine that. Imagine out on East Maple between the Little League ball fields and the Walsh University District, where we could actually create a place where it would be a destination. People would want to come there for this. It's the possibilities are endless with what we could do here. So as we load some of these photos, I will walk you through this. So right now, if you follow this arrow up, this is all existing parking right now. 237 spaces. Even for the Little League, in the tournament play that they host, it's insufficient parking. People are parking in the neighborhoods, people are parking down at Walsh and walking down. It's creating some difficulties. The way it's presently set up, it's difficult to get out and to empty the parking lot in a quick fashion. So again, with the non-orthogonal parking concept, this land that is east of the parking lot presently is just all green space that the city acquired about 17 years ago. And by introducing this parking kind of concept, we would go from 237 parking spaces to 370. So, a very significant improvement that would be an economic benefit to those that want to have more daytime tournament play at the Little League fields. The Little Leagues are very interested in this as well. As we were designing this, we were thinking of, again, creating a destination. So if you look, here's another concept for vehicular entrance to the park. But also then, once you're inside the park, creating a sports field pedestrian entrance. We want the children that are playing here to realize they've come to a place. This is a cool thing. I can remember, just as a quick personal aside, having played football for Massillon and McKinley and playing in those stadiums, that's a big deal. Playing in something that marks that. And I remember when I was being recruited for college in South Dakota Technical College, State University and Technical College was recruiting me. I asked them about their stadium. That was the first thing I wanted to know about. And they said that, well, we don't really have a stadium. People kind of pull their cars up along the field and turn their lights on when it's a night game. So it's an important thing for young athletes that you create something there for them. And if you've ever been up to Comerica Park in Detroit, you get to the wall, the archway that takes you in that says, hey, welcome to Comerica Park. You still got another 50 yards to go till you get to the stadium, but you've arrived someplace. All right, just a minute on the entrance and egress here. We would envision to make this thing empty quicker. We've determined that the vast majority of people who go to this facility and leave are heading west. Probably 85 or more percent are heading west. So we would like to introduce a continuous turn lane out of the park so that you wouldn't have to wait. You could just head out onto Maple and then merge with oncoming traffic. And there generally isn't any because everybody's getting out going this direction. But those that needed to turn this way wouldn't be impeding the view like they are now of those who are trying to exit. So this would speed things up. We would also make it so that buses could come into this and be able to bring in students, players, drop them off, turn around, head back out. We don't have that capability really at the present time. All right, we'll start at the north end. This is where the Stark Parks trailhead comes into this area, and it just ends unceremoniously in the parking lot. And again, if you've ever been up there, you'll note there are a lot of cars that are parked here throughout the day, every day, that go in and make this their launching point for their journey on the Stark Park trails. We would like to mark that. Stark Parks doesn't generally mark their trailheads, but we think that that would be a good idea for this location and to be able to show people that, hey, this is where you could go if you want to start your journey here. It's a place of rest. You could have a pergola there or some other type of wall feature that shows the maps of where you can go in this system. We would need, instead of having the trail end in this corner, we would move it over so that we can get it into the grassed area that we are going to be developing here. The first thing that you'll walk past is this natural biobasin. This is a permanent aquatic feature. And if you're familiar with the area, all this up in here is wetlands behind there. And we want to extend those wetlands with this biobasin to provide a permanent habitat for wildlife in that area. It's a great opportunity for it to be a reflection pond. You could even put a bridge over it, make it more interesting, stage a lot of seating around it. It has a lot of potential there. And the design on this is such that we're doing this environmentally friendly, taking the rainwater runoff that would happen, pushing it into the biobasin. So we would build it so that it wasn't filled all the way to the top, but in the event of storms or heavy rain, it could take on that water. And then we also would have a retention basin up here in the front. As you walk past this natural biobasin, you'll come to one of the main attractions that we were trying to put into play, which is a natural amphitheater. And we'll take a little bigger view of it. So this was just as a 3D kind of a rendering. You can do it a couple ways. You can have it open like this, or you can actually have it in the trees, where you have a treed canopy in the seating, natural stone seating. We would envision pavers in between in order to keep it dry. In the event of rainy season, we wouldn't want this grass to be too soft. Covered, great angles for everybody to see. We already have electricity in the area, so we could provide lighting for nighttime performances. If we could go back to the previous slide. Thank you. The seating on the amphitheater is about 354 people. Center stage, off to the side here, we can have a little facility that can house some of the electrical equipment, staging, costumes, that kind of stuff that we need if in the event that we're doing some performing arts. The Walsh University Players Association, the city schools, the North Canton Players Guild, all interested in being able to utilize that facility. When that wouldn't be in use for that, it's just a great place to go out and sit and reflect, but I could also envision in nice weather people getting married in this environment. It's a great showcase for that.
Is it a rentable place?
It would be a rentable place.
Patrick, now that is where that pavilion is at, that's up on the hill.
Yeah,
right?
we're going to come down to this part. So as you walk past the open amphitheater here, and again, we would also be putting public restrooms at the north end and the south end of this to accommodate the additional individuals that might be using the outdoor facilities. But as you come past that, then you come to this area. Now, topographically, this is the high point of the area, and this building could be constructed in a number of different ways depending on what the community would need. We're envisioning, again, a performing arts, a building with performing arts capability, because that's where the funding is available through the state for these types of things. It would be dual purpose. We would envision that when it's not being used for performing arts, that we could subdivide the inside and rent it out for small events, wedding anniversaries, baby showers, things like that. One of the neat designs that we've looked at here is an open air glass enclosed pavilion with additional outdoor seating in the round. Up in Goodyear Park up in Summit County, they have a lot of glass enclosed pavilions where the walls just roll in and lock into place. So if you're in the winter and you want it enclosed, it can be enclosed. But in the summer, you want that out, they just roll away. So it's a very neat concept. So that could be what it is, where we would cater more to just the performing arts, or we could enclose the entire building for that. So in conclusion, we've talked about the history of parks and recreation. We know that there's an evolution in park planning. We know we would like to be more current with our programming. We would like to have more cutting-edge programming. We've displayed what our existing infrastructure is, largely neighborhood parks. And we've talked about what the new additions are that we would like to potentially develop in this whole system. So where do we go from here? Well, where we go from here is we've put a proposal together that we're going to submit to the state of Ohio for funding. The total project cost for all that you've seen tonight, if it were implemented all at the same time, is approximately $6 million. If we broke that down, it roughly equates to about $5 million at East Maple, about $1 million at Dogwood, and about $100,000 at Bitzer. And in our proposal, we are suggesting that the city would contribute up to 10% of the project cost. Our contributions would be used towards creating outdoor public restroom facilities, relocating equipment storage and water field assets, toward electronic infrastructure, including public Wi-Fi, security cameras, electronic building access, and also for road improvements. So that would be approximately $600,000 city contribution. We're asking for $2 million from the state. That's roughly 33%. And the balance, 57%, we're hoping to raise through public-private partnership. So over the last several months, we've been talking to various benefactors throughout the city for their interest in this. There's a very high interest. So we're going to go ahead and submit this to the State Senate before the end of the year is our deadline. So we should be, from that point, gathering letters of support from organizations in the community that like this idea. I'll be speaking to the North Canton Rotary on December 7th. I'm speaking to another, Doug, what's the name of that group? There's a breakfast group that Doug Lane is in charge of that meets at Arrowhead every month. We're down there to talk to them. I've already presented to the Chamber Board. So as we get together with this, those of you that know of organizations that you would like me to reach out to and talk about this, I'd be more than happy to make that presentation. From members of council or in the administration, I'll entertain some questions, but let me just say from the members of the viewing audience, I will be here after the meeting, out there by the panel that I put out, and I'll answer any questions and stay as long as necessary for you to go over those displays that are out there. Questions from council or the administration?
I think it's exciting.
Yeah, I just like to thank Patrick and also John Dodovich. John is sitting in the front there next to the camera, and John is he's the architect that worked with Patrick on this, and also is the project manager for the Hall of Fame Stadium. So he's a really, really good man, and he's done great work for the city on a number of designs. And also Doug Lane has been working on this with Patrick as well. So it just goes to show you when you get people together and you're working on projects like this. It started out as a small project, and then, with the potential available from the state of Ohio, it grew into, something as magnificent as this. So very nice.
Thank you.
Pat, excellent presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you to you, to John.
Don't forget the ending.
That's all, folks.
Very good.
Yeah, Pat, thank you so much.
Good vision.
We've come a long way with our parks, especially with this progressive council, and it's exciting to see what the future can be, especially if we get state funding. I think that's obviously the key, and private partnerships to help defray some of the costs. But it doesn't happen unless we put it on the drawing board and someone works hard at it and develops a concept. So thanks to everybody that's involved with that, and looking forward to see what we can do with the state and the business community and the organizations to move this agenda forward. I think it's a great thing for North Canton, so thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Well done.
Very good, Pat, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, if you wish to address council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address.
Chuck Osborne, 307 Federal Street, Southeast, North Canton, Ohio. This is not unheard of, but I'm continually having issues with public records requests. 2 weeks ago, I asked to basically update my collection of Planning and Zoning Board of Appeal minutes. And I emailed Linda Tice, because she's the only consistent city employee down there. The young lady who handles permits and answers the phone. They've changed personnel. The position was left unfilled for about a month and a half. Anyway, on November 12th, it was a Sunday night, I requested Planning Commission meeting minutes for January. I actually spelled out the January meeting of the Planning Commission, the January 25th. I already had February, March, April, May. And then I wanted June through whatever is currently been approved or is in draft form. Zoning Board of Appeals, I needed the March 28th meeting, and then beginning in May through, again, the end of the year. Whatever's been approved or in draft form. I put my phone number down there if there's any questions. 2 weeks later, I haven't heard a peep. I talked to Justine Wednesday. She was trying to piece together the various emails that went around between the law director and Linda and Justine. Why do citizens have to go through this? These were public meetings. The minutes were transcribed, approved by that body. Why can't that creator of the record, that holder of the record, just immediately provide that record? Better yet, why aren't these records just put online like the council minutes? And you wouldn't have to go through this. Now, in the process of this, I followed up this morning with Linda, and this is not the first time, I don't think. We all discovered that she never even finished the January 25th Planning Commission minutes. She had started them and left them unfinished. So consequently, we have January minutes that have never even been finished, never been submitted to the commission for approval, even though we have February, March, April, May, June, July, August, whatever, that have been completed and approved. Does this process have to be so fraught with pitfalls and shortcomings and basically a mess? Now in creating my files, because again, the cities are not very accessible. I have city council minutes going back to 2000, both digitized and in paper form. Same thing, planning and zoning. I have paper copies of all meetings since 2000. Because something pops in my head, I can immediately get up and go to the library and get my question answered to myself. And in the process of looking at these earlier meetings that I already had, I scanned one, and this is when they had transitioned to summarizing the minutes. And let me tell you, that isn't worth a hoot. We tried to tell you it wasn't going to work. I got up and spoke at one of the planning commission meetings and objected, and actually I objected to all 3 issues that evening, and the planning commission must agree with my concerns, because they rejected everything that night. Whoever summarized this simply says, Chuck Osborne objected. They didn't lay the basis for my concerns, nothing. I tried to ask Linda, because whether you're summarizing these or doing a verbatim transcript, you have to listen to the whole meeting. And if you're summarizing, you're probably going to have to listen back and forth 2 or 3 times to get the flavor of what's going on. It's cheaper, time-wise, and more accurate to transcribe them verbatim. You need to go back to transcribing them verbatim. And you need to put them on the city's website. Now, Wednesday night, when I went to look at the agendas, the entire tab of agendas for 2017 was gone. I called Melanie Rowe, says, have you seen this? She said, yes, she'd already seen it a few hours earlier. And last night, they were there, but they were in reverse order. You need to get your act together, and I would like these minutes. And we don't have to spend weeks going through the law director for meeting minutes that were publicly presented, publicly approved, and should be available in a timely fashion. So please, I'd like to have those minutes tomorrow. And Mrs. Tice apparently has not finished that January 28th meeting in the 2 weeks since I originally requested it. How many months does it take this individual to catch up and get this done in a timely fashion? Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Chuck, I agree with you. We can do better, we should do better, we will do better. And if she has those transcribed, let's get those.
We'll make sure that Chuck gets, we're gonna make sure you get a copy of those meeting notes, Chuck.
Thank you. All right, anyone else wishing to address council, please step forward, state your name, address.
Good evening, Melanie J. Roll, 308 Party Street. I have 2 items that I'd like to address. The first is the radar speed signs. I think there are 6, 2 on Everhard, 2 on Portage, and 2 on Main, South and North. I think they are effective. I think traffic is being reduced as far as the speed. I don't know how many of you were instrumental in getting those installed, but I want to thank whoever. I know Mr. Diorio was, and the council. So this is my positive statement for tonight. Thank you. Okay, my second item is the water board. I asked about it 2 weeks ago on November 13th. I believe the same 4 individuals are still on the water board currently. I'd like to know if the water board has met since November 13th, and if they have, oh my goodness, that noise is awful.
We're gonna just turn it down. I'll just turn it off. Smells like fireworks.
If the water board has met since November 13th, I'd like to know if there was an agreement between the city and any business entity. So this is an ongoing concern of mine. Has the water board met? And will you please make it public if it has? Thank you.
Mary Beth, can you isolate that channel that's coming from?
Or maybe we just turn it off.
I don't know what channel it is.
address council, please step forward. All right. Excuse me, seeing none, we will move on to old business. We have a motion and a second to read by title only the third reading of ordinance number 90-17.
So moved.
Second.
Fontaine.
Yes.
Griffith.
Yes.
Kiesling.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Surratt.
Yes.
And Folds.
Yes.
7 yes to read by title only the third reading of ordinance number 90, 2017, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of North Canton upon Board of Control approval to enter into a supplemental sewer agreement by and between the city of North Canton and the city of Canton for the sludge processing modifications project located at Canton's water reclamation facility.
Thank you. Chairman Surratt.
Yes, this is third reading. It was in committee and discussed. This is our share of Canton's new sludge processing modification project. So since they were the only show in town, we got our little share of it. I move that we approve this in third reading.
Griffith.
Yes.
Kiesling.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Surratt.
Yes.
Folds.
Yes.
Fontaine.
Yes.
7 yes to adopt the third reading of ordinance number 90, 2017.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second to read by title only the second reading of ordinance number 92-17.
So moved.
Second.
Kiesling.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Surratt.
Yes.
Folds.
Yes.
Fontaine.
Yes.
And Griffith.
Yes.
7 yes to read by title only the second reading of ordinance number 92, 2017, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of North Canton, Ohio for the period beginning January 1st, 2018 and ending December 31st, 2018, and declaring the same to be an emergency.
Thank you. Chairman Griffith.
This is the budget. Obviously, this is second reading for everybody. It does include a little bit of money for the sound system. So that it improves the situation. Are there any other questions or concerns relative to the budget? Nope. Seeing none, I would move this approval.
Second.
Peters.
Yes.
Waring.
Yes.
Surratt.
Yes.
Yes.
Fontaine.
Yes.
Yes.
Kiesling.
Yes.
7 yes to adopt the second reading of ordinance number 92, 2017.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second to suspend the rules of council for 3 readings for ordinance number 92-17.
So moved.
Second.
Waring.
Yes.
Surratt.
Yes.
Folds.
Yes.
Fontaine.
Yes.
Griffith.
Yes.
Kiesling.
Yes.
And Peters.
Yes.
7 yes to suspend the rules of council for 3 readings for ordinance number 92, 2017.
What about the overall volume?
Hold on.
Better than what we have.
All right.
All right.
Maybe.
Yeah, right here. I got it. All right, motion and a second to adopt under suspension of the rules, ordinance number 92-17.
So moved.
Second.
Surratt.
Yes.
Folds.
Yes.
Fontaine.
Yes.
Griffith.
Yes.
Kiesling.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
And Waring.
Yes.
7 yes to adopt under suspension of the rules for ordinance number 92, 2017.
All right, thank you. May I have a motion and a second to
I've
read
got
by...
to excuse myself, Jeff.
Yeah. All right, let the record reflect. Member Griffith has left the room. Motion and a second to read by title only the second reading of ordinance number 94-17.
So moved.
Second.
Surratt.
Yes.
Folds.
Yes.
and Waring.
Yes.
6 yes, 1 abstaining, to read by title only the second reading of ordinance number 94, 2017, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Administration of the City of North Canton to request quotes for insurance, including but not limited to general liability, personal injury liability, automobile, building and contents, equipment, floater, crime, boiler, machinery, and firemen's errors and omissions insurance according to specifications on file in the office of the Director of Administration, and for the mayor to be authorized upon Board of Control approval to enter into a contract for the policies.
All right, thank you. Finance Director Brown, any comments?
The same process we walked through with health insurance, and now we're doing it with the.
Very good. Any questions from council? Okay, entertain a motion and second to adopt the second reading of ordinance number 94-17.
So moved.
Second.
Folds,
Yes.
Fontaine,
Yes.
Keesling,
Yes.
Peters,
Yes.
Waring,
Yes.
and Surratt.
Yes.
6 yes, 1 abstain, to approve the second reading of ordinance number 94, 2017.
All right, thank you. Record reflect, Member Griffith has rejoined. At this time, reports. Member Fonte.
I just wanted to say thanks, Pat, for the presentation. I believe that what you talked about is what's sorely needed for our community, looking at the 21st century with millennials and working on the Main Street Business District and hopefully Hoover District. I think it'll tie in nicely hand in hand, so I'm excited for that. So thanks for sharing that. The second thing is there's cards out. Pastor Hamel, the one that said prayer a few times. Their church is having a nice family event. They set the whole church up like it's back in Jesus' time. It's pretty fun. So if you have anybody wants to go see it, it's free. Cards are on the table.
Thank you, Tom.
That's it.
Very good. Member Ware.
Thanks, Pat, also, because I work with a lot of millennials and see a lot of different surveys that are done from Seymour and Dave, I think you've seen them too, those communities, and what people care about and what means something to you, why people move, why people leave. And a lot is parks and recreation, and I've visited a lot of the parks, and I am always like, why do we not have that? I mean, so I think it's really crucial, and it was nice to see it visually this time. We had all talked about it, and you and I had conversations, but to actually see it, so thank you to the architect for doing that as well. I'm excited to see what they think of it down in Columbus. And let's see, I know the tree lighting is coming up, so we have a lot of fun community events that are going to be happening, and it will look very pretty very soon. Main Street. Sorry. And I just want to say, this is Dan's last meeting, and I just want to say how much I've enjoyed working with Dan. And Dan kind of was one of the ones that brought me into this community and into this type of work. And I've so enjoyed working with you, and I've learned from you, and I've grown from you. I love your positive energy and your spirit. I always think you're like our Pastor Dan up here. When things get heated, he always says, calm it down, and he brings just a great sense of responsibility to the office. And just thank you. I will miss seeing you here on Mondays. But I'll still be calling you, and I know you're still going to do a lot in the community, and I work a lot with leadership, and you're very successful in your job, so I have no concerns of what is out there for you, but you will be missed, for sure, in this seat. So.
Well, I have two things. First, I want to ask Pat, where are we at with Sullivan and Fieldcrest zoning?
Let me ask the second one before I answer the first.
It's not the second question. The second one is the question. Go ahead.
Okay. I spoke with the zoning consultant. I got his take on where things are. I asked him to go ahead and put it in writing to us, and I'm expecting that this week. And then we can schedule time for him to come in and talk to us about it.
Okay, so we're in communication.
We're driving, yeah.
All right. So I had to write down what I wanted to say to Dan, only because it's so hard, and I've lost before and had to say goodbye on the floor, and that was horrible. I didn't think I could, but I did, and hopefully I don't have to hear. But I begin with, I will miss your amazing articulation of the issues that come to us every Monday night. When you first came on council, your articulation drove me absolutely insane. And I think it was more because I was like, oh, okay, let's go. But now it's so refreshing and so genuine, and that's the best part of it. You say what we're all thinking, but you say it with such kindness and gentleness and sincerity and class. Sometimes I know I don't. So I truly appreciate that. You've definitely helped to balance me out personally, sitting beside me over these last few years, nudging me and hitting me, and I appreciate that. I believe you're wise beyond your years. You are definitely a lot younger than me. I would truly appreciate your sincerity, your positivity, but your willingness to work hard and get down to the nitty-gritty. You've done such a great job, and we're all going to miss that. You've become a great friend, obviously, and helped me through this past year, and I appreciate that. Thank you for being genuine, sincere, hardworking, super smart, super articulate, and a great team player. You really made this council amazing. The seven of us are pretty cool, and we've had a great several years, but you're really a big part of it. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate you sitting beside me and keeping steadfast on. It's very helpful, especially the last 4 years. So thanks for everything you've done for us.
Wait till the end. So you can First of all, Melanie, I want to make sure that we cover a couple things. We have not met any water board meetings. We have nothing in sight right now to meet, but if we do, we're ready for it. Let's just put it that way. And Pat, great job with the presentation. The decorating for the Christmas tree will happen tomorrow around noon, and then the chamber program, of course, this weekend. Okay, so Daniel, probably miss you the most for a lot of different reasons. Your great comments, of course, sitting next to you, humor and your little notes that you pass on to me.
I got them too.
And
I think we've all got them.
and at times where those are things that are needed. It's a breath of fresh air. It really is, and I definitely miss that. You're a classy guy all the way around. When you're good, and it's a cliche, but when one door closes, another one opens, and we've been through that. I mean, at my age, I've been through a lot of different ones like that, and they all come out good. I think God has a different plan for you. Maybe you're not supposed to be this year a council guy. Maybe there's some other things that. So follow that. Don't just be negative towards it. Follow that and go towards it. You don't have to have council member by your name to be a leader, and you never did, and you never will. So just keep doing what you're doing, and I hope to see you a lot of things throughout the community and everything, because you're a vital part of it, and I'm not going to lose you as a friend, for sure. Okay, good.
Well said. This with the mission, excuse my cough, but it's been a great attitude to this council. And one thing I can say, you made this council. And that's a highest compliment. I've been here 3 years. It's been a great council to work with, and you're a very big part of that, and I appreciate that. You really took the finance under your wing. You understood it better than anybody in recent memory here, and explained it, and were very heartfelt with all your discussion points, whether we agreed or not. You just were eloquent, and we needed it in a way that you made your points, and it was refreshing. So it was very missed, but I know you'll be part of the community. You live in Ward 1, so that's a good thing around. And enjoy your kids, and it's like serving on council. We appreciate the time of service. Thank you.
And Dan, I can't say what has already been said any better. You're truly a class act. You have taken this council to another level. Your contributions to the finance committee, this council administration, the taxpayers are forever indebted to you. You're forward thinking, and always having your eye to the bottom line. What you've done up here in a short period of time is nothing short of amazing. And I want to personally thank you for being you. And what Mark said, you know, I mean, there's bigger things for you, man. So, thank you. Director Law.
Yes, sir. Much like Billy Joel's Piano Man, Dan is known for being quick with a joke. And if you know Dan, all of his jokes are at his own expense. It's his self-effacing humor, it's uncommon, and it's greatly appreciated. You will always walk away after a conversation with Dan either feeling better about yourself or the circumstances that brought you together. So always appreciate that. Thank you.
Director of Finance.
Well, I think I'll join all these comments by just saying that Dan knows how much help he's given me over the past year and a half and how much kindness he's shown to me. So I'll just say thank you.
Director of Administration.
I already said last week you weren't sexy, and it's on the record, so. It's all about bonds and budget. We appreciate what you did for us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Dan, since you started, we've developed a great friendship. And, you know, there's always two things that you look at in somebody that you're working with. Number one, can you trust them? And number two, can you respect them and the work that they do? And you and I developed a relationship where I had a great deal of trust in the work that you were performing, whether it be for the finance department or any project. And I could always trust that you were going to tell me what you were thinking, whether I liked it or not. And I could always trust, too, that you would make me laugh. Even if you would make me mad first, then you would make me laugh afterwards, you know? But I think that that's really a gift that you have, to be able to, you know, keep things serious, and I could always trust that you were going to do the best for the community and for everybody involved, and always had a lot of respect for the time that you'd be willing to put into a project. And especially on that, when we were doing that budget forecasting, it was like a 3-hour meeting, and I thought, oh my gosh, this just like took forever, and I was trying to grasp what we accomplished, and when we were done, you said, wasn't that a great meeting? We got so much done. And Laura was the state auditor at the time, and it was only the 3 of us that were in the meeting, and she thought it was great too. So I knew that we had the 2 numbers guys that were saying that it was a great meeting, so I was like, I think that was a great meeting, Dan. That was good. So, but you always kept a positive attitude, even when there was a lot of things that we had to work on and hard decisions to make. You kept it positive, always positive, you know, to work with. And one thing that I thought was funny is, and this is true, the young lady that you had introduced me to the one evening, she's a wonderful young lady, and what was more magnificent about it is her last name was Howard. And I said, yeah, and I said, Dan, that was my sister. I said, Dan, she's my sister. I didn't tell you that, did you? And of course, I was just joking on that one, but you didn't seem to be laughing so hard at that joke. I thought it was funny, but you know, that's okay. But yeah, we're glad that, you know, we all occupy these seats for just a period of time. You know, we serve the community, and then at some point we move on. And, but, you know, for certain, our city is so much better for the service that you provided. And there's a number of things that went on, projects that you initiated and that you completed, particularly with the refinancing of our debt, and also working through the budget through some really difficult times. The community benefits from it. Most people don't realize it, but all will benefit from the work you've done. So we're glad that you served here, and more importantly, that you've become a good friend. So thank you. And then lastly, the only other report that I have is the 2017 annual Community Christmas Sing and Tree Lighting. Tree will be decorated tomorrow, right, Mark? And then Doug Lane, still here at Chamber of Commerce, is going to be the MC for it. It'll start at 5 o'clock. with the Hoover High Notes from 5 to 5:15, and then 5:15, the On Point Arts will do a presentation from 5:15 to 5:20, and then 5:20 to 5:30, the North Canton Playhouse Elf will be there, and 5:30 to 5:45, the Hoover High-Lows, that's when they sing Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And then at 5:45, Santa and Mrs. Claus will arrive, followed by the Christmas tree lighting. And so all are welcome to attend. We'll have refreshments, and Santa and Mrs. Claus will visit with the children by the fireplace at the Main Street Grill. And so we can, we're going to hold it there, especially if it's chilly. But even if it isn't, it'll be a nice place to go. And we're going to have the road closed too, right, Mike? So it'll be nice and safe for the children to walk back and forth. So you don't have to worry about the traffic. So all are welcome.
Dave, just piggyback on that. Christmas tree decorated at noon tomorrow. Anyone's invited. Anybody can participate. So the more the merrier. Put up.
Yeah, everybody's welcome to, but you're going to be organizing it and making sure that it gets done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Engineer.
Thank you. Some good financial news. We opened the bids last week, a week and a half ago, for the Foster Hartman Waterline project out on East Maple by the old Hoover plant. We had appropriated $250,000, and we had estimated about $215 would be the bid. Actually, we had 11 bidders, which is a huge number. And our low bid was $125,650.
That's what I'm talking about. Not one or two bidders. That's what makes it drive it down.
Right. So yeah, had a lot of sharp pencils and
That's good. That was good.
a nice savings for us.
That's the way it works. Nice idea.
And then some even better news. As you recall, we had received federal funding after July 1st of 2018 or fiscal 19 to repave South Main Street. We'd estimated that at $760,000, and we had 80% funded previously, or $608,000. We had applied for our share locally for Ohio Public Works Commission monies, that $152,000, and I found out about a week and a half ago we were successful.
Nice.
So basically, we'll get South Main Street paid for next to nothing. So
Good.
Nice
job.
That's great.
Yeah, that deserves
And lastly, just thank you, Dan. I've only been here a short time, and from day one, my first meeting back in February, it made me feel welcome, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Director of Administrative Services.
This feels like some sort of Dean Martin celebrity roast. All these people talk all these nice things. So Dan, from the bottom of my heart, I never really liked you. It's a roast. It's over, Dan. Phone call. It's time to go. Last call, Dan. I appreciate what you've done for me in my short time here. There are a number of critical projects that the community might not likely see because some of it is behind the scenes, but it will set a legacy for generations to come with what we've put in place here. It would not have happened without you. I appreciate it. That's it.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Dan, it's been a pleasure working with you. I will miss you. That's all.
Thank you.
Good, Dan.
All right. You're the man.
Well, you knew how much I abhor long and boring speeches or stories, but and so tonight I will simply say, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. Thank you for what each of you have taught me. Thank you for the patience that each of you have shown me at points, and thank you for being a great community. I really appreciate it, and I miss you all very, very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks. Okay, at this time, final call on the council for new business. See none, we go over the December meeting schedule. Saturday, December 2nd, 6 p.m. organizational meeting. Monday, December 4th, we have a regular committee meeting. And I have on here for a special council meeting. We'll address that in the committee meeting following this meeting. Before I go on, I'd like a roll call vote to have that placed on the agenda next Monday following the committee meeting. So do I have a motion and a second?
Motion for special council meeting December 4th.
Second.
Yes.
Fontaine?
Yes.
Griffith?
Yes.
Kiesling?
Yes.
Peters?
Yes.
Waring?
Yes.
And Soretta?
Yes.
7 yes to have a special council meeting on December 4th, 2017, following the committee meeting.
Yeah, following the committee meeting. And then finally, Monday, December 11th will be regular council meeting. And then we will have no meeting on December 18th or Monday, December 25th. And that concludes the agenda. Entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved. Second.
Fontaine?
Yes.
Griffith?
Yes.
Kiesling?
Yes.
Peters?
Yes.
Waring?
Yes.
Soretta?
Yes.
And Foltz?
Yes.
7 yes to adjourn the council meeting.
All right, we are adjourned from this meeting. Before I call the special committee meeting, do you need anything signed?
Do you need some?
You're good? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I want to keep you longer than you need to.
Okay, I'd like to call to order a special committee of the whole meeting, Monday, November 27th, 2017, 8:23 p.m. Clerk, please call the roll.
Soretta?
Here.
Foltz?
Here.
Fontaine?
Here.
Griffith?
Here.
Kiesling?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
And Waring?
Here.
7 present, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. First up, Park and Recreation, Chairman Foltz.
Thank you. Pat, you already introduced this ordinance a little while ago, but I think we had a couple typos, I guess, that we need to correct, or some language in it that we need to clarify. I think one of them was, I think it's on the second page here, out by 1 p.m. There was some discussion whether it was noon or 1, but the special rate is if you're out by 1 p.m., you have the special rate of $115 to the Civic Center. The other one was Sunday for $490, and Pat, I don't remember what you said earlier, whether it was in the wrong column or...
Yeah, in the, thank you, Councilman Foltz. In the spreadsheet that we had put together, there was a column shift, and the rates and the days came out of alignment. So okay. Sunday's rate was posted as a Monday rate. Okay. So we had a couple staff meetings that were going over the implementation of this. This ordinance was originally scheduled to go into effect on December 1st, so we're in that final process, crossing T's, dotting I's, and the staff picked up that. So it really should be $490. As I said to council, that we were not advocating a change in any of the rates at the Civic Center in that respect, so we want to make that right. And the other one was just a typo. Should have been 1 o'clock instead of 12.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Nope. If not, we'll amend the agenda to put it back on and pass it. Okay, thank you.
All right, next up is my committee, Personnel and Safety. This is an ordinance that's amending the sick leave portion of personnel regulations. This will allow employees to donate and receive paid leave when fellow employees who are otherwise eligible to accrue or use sick time are in critical need of leave due to serious illness of the employee or a member of the employee's family. Without getting into specifics, we are faced with this as we speak, and we need to get this on the books immediately so Director of Finance and Payroll can get this implemented and put in place. So, and that's about it. We have a need.
Yeah. Is there any Ohio code that has anything like this in there? That
Okay. Do other employers do this?
A lot of employers do it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Oh,
Well, and
yeah.
when I worked for the state, we had it.
Okay.
And people utilized it quite often. And
yeah, I know private sector has. I was just wondering if.
Yeah, we had a policy, and actually, the policy that the law director worked on was modeled off of the one that we had used at the state level.
And as a home rule municipality, the argument is this is a matter of local concern. Should have the authority to put in place something for the health, welfare, benefit of residents, including city employees.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, without further comment, we'll put that on the agenda next week.
Sounds good.
All right, next up, last but not least, Finance and Property, Chairman Griffin.
Danny.
Long one, Dan.
Yeah.
I was going to say, couldn't be
Take it last.
Come on,
You want to go through the budget line by line again?
stretch it out. We have 4 items here. The first is that it's time to enter into our contract again for cleaning services. Mike, any additional comments here?
I'll take that one. Yes, we're started that process of communicated with all the department heads, asking them for their input on the last 2 years, pros and cons, good and bad, getting all that feedback in, and then we're going to tweak the bid specs to reflect, more attention to what some of the department heads are indicating to us are some concerns. And then I wanted to get this out to bid like in January, so hence the need to kind of move this now so that we can get that out and then open bids and decide where we are. And this ties into the record. This is what we were all talking about when we laid that case out a couple months ago, that we had to adjust our ordinances so that we were not absorbing any change in that bid process if it comes in higher. If it comes in lower, we'll pass that straight on to the end user and give them a lower rate.
Any other comments? I assume we'll add it to the agenda for the next meeting. Secondly, it's time for us to sell the bikes that accumulate in the police department. So this is an ordinance allowing the police to do that, as we do periodically. It seems like we do this like every 3 months, but that's
A lot of bikes up.
We're not selling, donating. We are donating.
Yes, we're doing that
Salvation Army.
to the Salvation Army, and they're disposing of them too. And this is a good time for that to happen.
Like giving them to the needy?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
And as usual,
Waste parts and things like that, clean them up.
As usual, Mr. Stretta will make his comment that if his bike from
I just want to make sure I check every one of those bikes. One could be mine still.
I'm missing mine too from 8th grade.
You're never getting it back.
No.
So I think I saw it down there.
Item C is, again, our periodic relationship that we established for legal services. Tim, you want to make a comment about this one?
No, sir, that's kind of standard we do each year with the Cantons legal department to prosecute our cases. Ironically, we had one recently where this was.
Timmy said no.
It just comes out this way.
Okay.
This involves a case where it was a housing violation, went to mayor's court, the person pled not guilty, it automatically is transferred to Canton Municipal Court. We are paying Canton's prosecutors to prosecute cases on our behalf. The individual applied for and received a public defender, paid for by the city of North Canton. The good part is the matter resolved itself. All we simply wanted the individual to do is to resolve the housing issue. He went ahead and did that. We asked the prosecutor to dismiss the case, which she did, so it resolved itself. But we were actually putting the bill on each side of that. Somehow it just worked out that way.
Certainly a much more effective way to do it rather than hire our own folks who don't do it full time. So.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any other questions relative to that? Nope. All right. Last but not least, you'll see a voluminous proposal here, which are the changes to our income tax ordinance. As we know from last year, House Bill 5 made some standardized changes, and as a result, we need to periodically make some changes to make sure we're in compliance. Laura, do you have any comments about this one?
Sure. The changes, like you said, stem from House Bill 5 and also the budget bill from last year. And the law director was nice enough to go through the suggested changes from Rita and apply those to our own ordinances.
Any other questions relative to that?
Just stretch it out a little minute.
That's all I have.
That's it? You sure?
Come on, Dan.
That's it.
That's all, folks.
All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Folds,
Yes.
Fontaine.
Yes.
Griffith.
Yes.
Kiesling.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.